background that most people already know, and we'll jump right into some real live Q&A with some experienced OCBers who have been involved in leading a proposal and running an OCB activity from start to finish. We have done this before. We did this type of webinar for our last solicitation, and you can actually find the recording of that linked on the solicitation webpage. So I recommend taking a look at that because we featured different activities in that one, so that will help you get additional insights on different types of OCB activities. But for now, I just wanted to start with our overarching science focus areas. They're up here in the right-hand side in the green icons. This really broadly encompasses most of what OCB science is about. It's tremendous. It's got tremendous breadth. It's really sitting at the nexus of climate and climate change, biogeochemistry, and marine life. You can find all kinds of information about OCB on our website, subscribing to our monthly e-newsletter. You can reach us at that email address anytime, and we are very active on Blue Sky and YouTube. Every activity we do is recorded, and the recordings are posted on YouTube. I want to just briefly acknowledge the long-term support OCB has received. The project office is funded by NSF Chemical and Biological Oceanography, as well as the NASA Ocean Biology and Biogeochemistry program. And we are hosted at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. See if we can advance the slide. Here we go. So today we're going to feature, as I said earlier, various activities, OCB activities that have happened recently. And one of the categories is workshops and training activities. The primary aim of these types of activities is it's really interdisciplinary community building and also capacity building in the case of training activities. We want to hear about anticipated outcomes of said activity. Maybe it's a workshop report, or maybe it's a publication, an actual manuscript, or other open source materials, technical manuals, or GitHub repositories, whatever. Even thinking long-term down the road, if you're thinking about bringing together an interdisciplinary group of people to help prioritize or discuss a budding research area, and then thinking down the line about specific outgrowths of a workshop. And maybe that looks like a small group activity to kind of take on one or two of the priorities that you might come up with at the workshop. We want to know how this activity is going to fill a knowledge or a capacity gap in an OCB research area. If it's in person, we strongly encourage hybrid formats because that really helps broaden participation. We're very limited and travel is expensive now. So thinking about how you can reach a broader audience with your workshop is a really good thing. And the project office is fairly experienced at running hybrid activities, so we are well equipped to help you with that. We are also welcoming fully virtual activities or activity proposals. So the sky is the limit. If you have an idea, come talk to us. We also want you to really think at the proposal stage about the application process and the evaluative rubric that you would use to identify who will come to this workshop. And what combination. Maybe you have an open registration, or maybe you have an application process, and you have to select people who will participate. In many cases, we get flooded with applications and then have to make difficult decisions, and we try to be very transparent about how we'll make those decisions, and that requires a rubric. What are the criteria? How will you rank your candidates? So that's something to be thinking about as well. For small group activities, these are very targeted. They have a targeted focus and very tangible outcomes. In past small group activities, we've seen manuscripts, white papers, best practices, guides, technical manuals, metadata templates, open source, like GitHub repos and other code repositories or other digital sharing tools. These typically will last 1 to 2 years. They're fully virtual going forward. So small working groups are generally in anywhere from 8 to 16 people, depending on what your aims are and what the disciplinary representation you're looking for is. Maybe it has to be a little larger, maybe it can stay small and targeted. But these are moving forward, these need to be virtual, but we are providing up to 15K per working group to enable one in-person gathering, perhaps in conjunction with an OCB meeting or another meeting like Ocean Sciences or AGU or EGU. We're really trying to find ways to gather opportunistically and minimize travel costs. We want to hear, in this case, about how you will assemble your group, whether you're an application processor, it's invitation only, or some combination of those two. And also, when we have small group activities, OCB working groups have been really effective at not working in a vacuum. So thinking about how can you open up your outcomes and foster broader input and a two-way dialogue in your process? How can you work that in? For example, the Mixotrophy working group had thematic webinars every 2 months, and we'd have feature a different mixotrophy topic, and anyone was welcome to attend. And then maybe the last 30 minutes, you end the meeting after an hour or the webinar, and you have a private meeting with your working group members and kind of have that opportunity to think on the kinds of broader feedback you may have gotten during that process. But I really encourage you to think about how to foster that broader dialogue. It really enriches the working group outcomes. Finally, we're kind of trying out a new format now with rising costs of travel and budgets coming down. We want to think about how people can gather around a topic or a problem or a regional issue. Um, Gathering in person, easy, everybody can come. It's a within a day's drive. There's no hotel required. People can really have a focused, regionally relevant discussion. So in the past, you're going to hear today about a regional marine carbon dioxide removal node. We were calling them nodes. And I think we had 3 regional node activities focused on mCDR. One was for the Gulf of Mexico, one was for California coast, and one was for the Pacific Northwest. So you're going to hear today from one of the leaders of the Pacific Northwest node. So this, like I said, you want to bring together practitioners across sectors, or maybe across management and academia. Maybe you want to make sure you have different career stages represented, whatever is most pressing and most appropriate for what you aim to accomplish. But it should really be about regional community building and problem solving. We want to see an anticipated timeline and outcomes. How will so the travel or the budget cap is 10K. So how will 10K really make a difference for what the problem you wish to tackle and the practitioners you aim to gather? What will you talk about? How will you gather? What formats will you gather around? So this can be just one gathering. This can be multiple gatherings. We won't be funding travel support in this case, so it's expected that people can drive or even walk or take a bus, but people can come together on this smaller local to regional scale. And you can use the 10K for things like food or meeting room costs, publications or other outcomes of your gathering. And that's really what the model is that we're trying to emulate here. And you'll hear a little bit more from Sarah about how the Pacific Northwest node has blossomed into burgeoning community of practice and the things that have come out of it. These folks are collaborating on proposals. They're working across national borders. They're really advancing. They're advancing regional knowledge around mCDR, and I think that that's a really important thing to do from a problem-solving perspective and from a connecting science to actionable outcomes perspective. My general advice, and I probably said a lot of these things over and over again to many of you, please tell us why this should be an OCB activity. I don't want to get proposals from people for activities that they want to do under some other organization or agency that they just want to get some OCB support for, and then, you know, tweak the language to make it seem like an OCB activity. I want you to tell me why this should be an OCB activity and why now. Do your homework. Relevance. What is the relevance to OCB? All of our research questions are listed in the solicitation. And really spend a little time looking at what we have done. Every single activity OCB has supported, you can find information about it on the website, what its focus was, what its outcomes were, maybe what its outgrowth activities were. Like in the case of the mCDR nodes, that started with an mCDR workshop and then the nodes. So we had this, you know, broader gathering and then these more focused regional discussions. Read the planning guidelines, please. One of the number one rules of effective project management is to build, for building regional estimate or reasonable estimates, is to look at what's been done before. So in looking at these previous OCB activities and looking at our advice about planning timelines and logistics, spend a little time on that because it will show in your proposal. We have put together very detailed proposal guidelines and requirements. That's a whole section of the solicitation. So we really recommend that you follow that to the letter. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. I only want to see proposals that are for authentic OCB activities, not a request to support another agency or program-led activity. This is a travel support request, and frankly, that is not inspiring as an OCB activity proposal. We want to advance OCB's community building and OCB's scientific outcomes. And so this should be an OCB-led OCB activity. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to talk with you about your idea, but I really recommend thinking carefully about how you pitch this and making sure it is about OCB and not something else. And not using OCB as a mechanism to support something else. Sadly, I should tell you now, we are not doing travel support requests for the foreseeable future. We'll announce if that changes, but that is on a pause for now due to funding levels. I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing that as well. We are not asking for budgets, so I know this really helps reduce the load on many of you. We've come to learn over the years that really it's the OCB staff who can make the best judgments on developing a reasonable budget, and we know how much things cost. We know how much workshops, we know how to optimize and make it as cost effective as possible. So we just want to hear about what you need support for. And pay attention to what we told you in the solicitation and the things that we cannot provide support for. There are, you know, salary analyses. There are just things that we cannot pay for with OCB funds. Finally, all proposals must be led by at least one US-based PI, and all in-person OCB gatherings have to take place in the US. That is per NSF guidelines and NASA guidelines. So today we're going to hear from PIs of several activities listed here. We'll talk about the recent 2025 PACE hackathon. This was for the NASA PACE satellite, which is churning out data all the time. And this took place in early August, and we'll hear from Anna Wendell and Jeremy Wardell on that. We'll hear about the Pathways Connecting Climate Changes to the Deep Ocean workshop, which took place 2 Aprils ago. And that was a joint activity with US CLIVAR. And we'll hear from Zach Erickson about that. We'll hear about the Leaky Deltas workshop, which just happened in March, from Kanchan Maiti and Shoili Raman. We'll also hear about, for small group activities, the Benthic Ecosystem and Carbon Synthesis, the BECS working group. That topic will be led by Christina Schultz and Jess Luo. Regional hubs, we're gonna, as I said, hear from Sarah about the Pacific Northwest Regional mCDR node. And as I said before, feel free to watch the video that's already on the solicitation homepage, because you'll learn about even more OCB activities that we have held over the last 5 years. So thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing. And I will maybe hand it off to Jeremy and Anna to talk about the PACE hackathon.
You want to let her rip, Anna?
Sure, and you can fill in with what I missed. But yes, I can't take credit for this idea. Jeremy had this wonderful idea, kind of modeled after a course that OEL held in 2022? When did PACE launch?
Yeah.
The year before PACE launched, they held a lecture style course all about PACE. So they brought in a lot of experts to talk about all the I think it was called, Look Behind the Curtain of PACE. It was at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is nearby NASA Goddard. And so we kind of built upon the model of this course, but now that PACE was in space and we were getting new data, we turned it into a Hackweek. So it was still at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We've done it twice now, once in 2024, once in 2025. Participants come from all over the world. Most are from the US. I think we have like around 10 to 12 international participants, and they stay at UMBC in the dorms. All the meals are at UMBC, and we work in a room and have lectures, coding tutorials, and then small group work. And at the end of the week, the groups present what they worked on, and the goal is, to have a public GitHub repo where they share their code, and to encourage them to keep working and to turn it into a publication. And we do have some teams still working from 2024 on their topics. And so, yes, we had about 40 participants the first time. We had 50 this past year. All of the lectures and coding tutorials are recorded and put on YouTube. And we blast those to the listserv so everyone can view and learn from them. And then we have a website for the event where we have we use Python Jupyter notebooks. So all of the code is publicly available for everyone to use. What did I miss, Jeremy?
I mean, you hit all the high points. We're very thankful to OCB for being so supportive of this. There's no way it gets pulled off without them. Unquestionably impossible without you guys, gals.
I want to point out that this team is incredible. They've done this 3 different times, and so they've built their capacity over each iteration, and they have what I think is like something that is marketable, or not. I don't want to marketable in a money way or a commercial way, but something that
we need money
has been built upon and further developed. And I also think that a smaller scale version of it could be useful to have, just to put PACE data into the hands of more people, especially early career scientists. If we had kind of a miniaturized version, portable version of something like this, because this has been tremendously impactful for all of the participants who've been involved, and all the materials go on their website too. So
yeah, and on that note, it really catalyzed not just for PACE, but our whole ocean ecology laboratory ecosystem now has an online help hub that's got a couple of dozen different Jupyter notebooks and other tutorials. And this Hack Week actually catalyzed being able to do all of that. And so it was a nice effort that grew into something much bigger that I think is a nice service to the world. So we're thankful for that too, because I don't think that would have happened nearly as seamlessly as it did from being able to do this.
Well,
So happy for questions or whatever you need, whatever you'd like.
I think I'll save questions to the end and just run us through some of the activities first. And I think maybe Zach, if you want to talk briefly about the Pathways workshop, and we might move, I know Shoily wanted to be here for the Leaky Deltas workshop. So, and she has to be a little late today. So maybe we'll jump to small group activities and come back to Leaky Deltas at the end. So Zach, take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Zach Erickson. I'm at NOAA PMEL, and I'm talking about a workshop that happened last April, or 2 Aprils ago, April of 2024, on pathways connecting climate change to the deep ocean. As Heather said before, this was a joint workshop between OCB and CLIVAR, and the genesis of it was actually in a CLIVAR working group, where Jinfeng Liang, who is the chair and is traveling today and can't be here, was kind of talking with people about the fact that the deep ocean and observations in the deep ocean is kind of a gap in a lot of the understanding that we have of the ocean, both in the observations that we have and kind of the processes that we think about. A lot of what we talk about in climate change is very surface ocean centric, and we wanted to do a workshop that thought about connections between the surface and the deep ocean. And as I said before, this was a joint workshop, and so it was very much a collaboration between CLIVAR, which was thinking a lot about the climate change side, and OCB was thinking a lot about the biogeochemistry side. And then we were also helped out by the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy, or DOOS. So this workshop brought 50 people together in Delaware, Lewes, Delaware, and about 30 or 35 people were virtual, so it's a fully hybrid meeting. And one of the things that we really wanted to do with this is think a lot about how we advertise this to the community and how we really got people kind of excited about the workshop and thinking about it before it happened. And two of the things that we did, which I think were very successful, and I'd recommend people think about doing these, is we did a town hall at OSM where we, really tried to think about bringing what we wanted to talk about in this workshop, which was, the different pathways by which physics, biology, and kind of the ecological, fish migrations and all of the ecology work together to connect the surface to the deep ocean, and both the observations and the models that we might use to think about this. So we put together a town hall to talk about this to anyone who wanted to show up at OSM, and we also advertised a lot of webinars beforehand, just to kind of get people on an email list and get people interested in thinking about these things before the workshop actually happened. The other thing that we did that I think was very useful, but might be harder to do now when you can't travel, is find a place that's a little bit more remote to have the meeting. But since a lot of things are moving virtual now, that's probably less of an option for people. I think maybe I'll stop there, and happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Zach. This workshop was really terrific right from the beginning because of how carefully they put their steering committee together for organizing it. I think that, we had kind of a DOOS representative, an OCB, we had two from each organization who were involved in leading this. So they were it was a meeting of the minds to think about the connectivity between the surface and deep ocean, and how climate change happening at the ocean atmosphere and intersection is communicated downward, and conversely how changes in the ocean are communicated upward. And I think that they spent a lot of time thinking about how to put this workshop together to glean both the insights within discipline, but more importantly, the insights across discipline. And this group is actively, they just published their workshop report, which May just posted, and they're working on a manuscript, a high-level manuscript, and then they're also thinking down the line about more specific outgrowths of this workshop. They really honed in on slow versus fast pathways. They brought together the physics and the ecology and the biogeochemistry, and it was a really effective forum, I thought, for having those. We've done a lot with US CLIVAR, and hopefully more in the future with DEWS as well. I would like to see OCB spend a little more time in the mid to deep from mesopelagic and deeper ocean to start exploring, especially as we think more about the biological pump. But I think that our interactions with US CLIVAR over the last 10 years have been especially fruitful because we bring in that ocean physics and climate dynamics expertise, mixed with OCB, what OCB brings to the table, which is really focused on the biogechem and the ecology and biology expertise. So again, a fantastic collaboration led by really awesome people. So thank you so much, Zach.
I will maybe just quick add to that to say that one of the really good things about going to OCB with your ideas is that they will give you really great feedback and suggestions. And so part of having a really good team putting this together is that when OCB funded this workshop, they did say like, hey, we think you have a really great representation in these areas, but also, maybe on the ecology side, you should think a little bit more about that. And so they really want it to work. It's not just they give you money and then they go away. They really stick with you the entire way.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we'll move to, why don't we do BECS now? I see Jessica and Christina. Fantastic. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay.
Christina, do you want to start?
Sure. So a little bit of how BECS came to be. I think it started back when I'm Christina Schultz. I'm an assistant professor at Northeastern University. It started when I was still at JFDL, and we had a little bit of a study group on benthic models. It's something that is not very well represented or as complex as it could be in models. So we're going through it and like, what are good decisions and how do the different models work? What are some of the different ways to represent sediment water interface processes? And we started thinking more about it, and we're like, okay, if we were to do something like that, how would we evaluate these models? And then we started getting into the data sets. And at some point, we kind of realized that there's a lot of different people thinking about these processes, but they're coming at it from different angles, and they're not necessarily understanding each other. And then there was a lot on the data sets and the observations and the experiments that we weren't fully comfortable with. So we got people from OCB is a great venue for how do we get everybody to be on the same page, and how do we discuss ways to move forward on something, a big issue. So sediment water interfaces and representation of these processes in models. And how do we make this happen by, putting together knowledge from different scientific communities, really. So we came up with BECS. The goal is to have some data synthesis, observations, and to have like observationalists and modelers talk to each other on how to improve these processes. So we had the first workshop last year, which was really great. We got some extra funding so we could bring international folks, like a big representation of people from abroad. I will second what Zach said about having activities at big conferences. So we had a session at Ocean Sciences before the workshop, which was great to get some attention and a little bit of an advertisement. We have another session at Ocean Sciences next year and 2 town halls. So the first workshop was really a first discussion on like what are some of the priorities to advance global benthic research, and sessions at AGU as well. So what are some of the priorities? So from that first workshop, we have 2 publications under review, and we're having the second workshop next month, which is going to be smaller but more hands-on activity on getting folks that are focused on observational research to try out some modeling and use data set collected by BECS participants to make it more personal and get some feedback on what are some things that we should be aware of when doing this model data comparison. Did I forget anything, Jessica?
No, I would just say that, so at the time during the solicitation, we struggled with whether this was going to be a small group or a large group activity. And there were a distinction between budgets for small and large group. We ended up advocating for like a larger small group because we needed general representation from a number of different subfields within benthic biogeochemistry and ecosystem work. And then in addition, the supplemental funds from Christina's Institute, Northeastern University, really helped us bring in, I think it was like 40 or 50 people to the first workshop. So I know that these budgets are now smaller. But maybe you can think about, are there creative ways to see about supplementing funds so that you can still do the work that you need to do, and think about like what is it that you actually need to like how many people, whether one workshop or 2 workshops or like kind of recurring groups. What is it that you actually need to get the work done rather than what does the budget allow? I mean, you kind of have to be practical, but there's also a little bit of like you can't lose out on what the goals of your working group or what is it that you want to do uh, just because of budget limitations. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense at all.
And we did have it hybrid, which was great because we had Ocean Sciences in February and then the workshop in April. So some people that were at Ocean Sciences are like, wow, this was a great session. How do we engage more? So they were able to participate, and you can't really expect people to, the planning was already ongoing for the workshop. So it wasn't feasible to have everybody that was interested come, even if we had all the budget. So.
And then one last thing I will say is that what we ended up doing with this working group, which is still ongoing, is a little bit different from what we originally proposed, but not totally different. What we are doing now, I mean, if you go on the OCB website and you can find our original proposal right up there. You'll see that, we had proposed this second workshop at WHOI, and we're doing the second workshop at Princeton, partially because of NOAA travel restrictions and because so I get to kind of host it and my team is leading the effort on that. There's some things that we just weren't really able to get off the ground. We're kind of these regular webinars, but that was just because I think our group was our steering committee ended up being a little bit overtaxed. in writing the papers that we wanted to write. So yeah, I'm not sure what Heather thinks about this,
There's a
but
lot going on, but not
we did our
necessarily
best, but it ended up evolving a little bit.
I think your working group is doing a fabulous job. I'm really excited at finally starting to dabble in sediments a little bit more, and having discussions about how to better represent these processes in models requires us to have discussions about how to opportunistically gather more measurements of them. The observations are a real challenge because they are so sparse in comparison to so many other realms of the ocean. We don't have a fleet of robotic instruments, generating sedimentary data, and we don't have time on station to be collecting sediment cores or sediment samples at, on ghost ship cruises or whatever. So I think it's forcing us to think a little bit more strategically as a community about how to more effectively scale up what few observations we have and think more opportunistically about how to get more. And I think that the communities that you've brought together and the emphasis on really incubating the science and focusing less on, every working group is different. You've gotten that broader, you've fostered that broader discussion and dialogue through your town hall meetings and these opportunities to develop these papers that are kind of like visionary papers for moving forward, I think are really good contributions to the ocean community. I think sediments is kind of in great need of that. So I'm really excited, and I of course enjoyed the opportunity to attend the first meeting and nerd out about mud for a few days, and then having a more focused and hands-on meeting coming up next month on the modeling component is going to be fantastic for this group. I think it'll be a springboard to some new collaborations and potentially some model intercomparison experiments and what have you. So I'm really excited about BECS, and I hope it leads to larger proposals getting funded and broader realization in the community that sediments are just critical in terms of big players in biogeochemical cycles. So
Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it.
absolutely.
And it has been a lot of fun too.
It has. And I think, having meetings here's a little tidbit of advice as well, having meetings at your home institution, if you can swing it, will often save you a lot of money because you'll get a lot of in-kind support from your department, because you're bringing new people to campus. You're bringing people and ideas to campus. And I think that that's always a really good thing. When we would have our OCB summer workshops in Woods Hole, we're bringing this really broad interdisciplinary group to campus, and it really enriches Hui. And of course, people are excited to come to Hui for many reasons. And it's a really nice symbiotic kind of a relationship. So highly encourage you to think about, especially if you're at, maybe an undergrad serving institution, or, not your classic, you don't have to be at a world-class, like oceanographic focused institution to think about doing this. We've had fantastic meetings all over the country, and we really like to kind of move these around. We don't want to just be in one place all the time. So all right. Well, thank you very much. It sounds like I got an email from Shoily saying she may not make it, so I might pass the baton to Kanchan now to talk about leaky deltas.
Yeah, hey.
And then
Sure.
Sarah will chat about the mCDR node. How does that sound?
Okay. Yeah, I can take on. Thanks, Heather. So I will start by saying couldn't have done this meeting without Heather, May, and Mary. They really guided us through this meeting all the time, and I personally learned a lot about how to do these things. So if you're thinking about doing one of these, don't be intimidated that, oh, I don't know how to do this. There is a lot of help and experience that can make it happen. So for our Leaky Delta, we started about a year before our actual meeting, which happened in March. And we kind of created the momentum by getting participants in for the webinars. We try to do 2 speakers every other month and try to mix it with some folks that are relatively well known versus some early career scientists. And it went really well and it got us the momentum. And then we had to do the hard decision of how to select the applicant pool. And I think that is critical for these kind of meeting. For us, there were 2 dimensions to it. One was to represent the different landscape, the different delta scape, starting from estuaries, wetland, open ocean, shelf, hydrology, ecology. And then also the second layer was try to represent different delta communities like Ganges Delta and then Mississippi Delta. It was not, although the meeting was at LSU, which is literally on Mississippi Delta, we didn't want it to be all about Mississippi Delta. So we had to make that decision to represent different folks who are working in different deltas across the world. Yeah, and I think that those 2 combined was quite challenging to figure out our final pool of participants, which was about 55, 56, which is, in my opinion, the right number. It had the right momentum. It was great to break it up into 4 or 5 breakout groups and still have a good conversation. And we also added to that some field component. We went out, looked at the River Delta Center here, which was kind of fun. And it is a pretty impressive place. Unless we visit it, we don't see how it actually looks. I thought that was fun. And then we also had, we also wrapped up the meeting with kind of like goals. I think that was important that we kind of decide what is our next plan of action at the end of the meeting. What is the deliverable? What are we looking at? How can we do this online? And that momentum carried us through. And the meeting was in March. It seems like so long, but I think we're very close to having 2 papers in semi-submission form by end of this month. And we did that through multiple breakout sessions for each section of the paper. And then we're kind of in the process of combining them right now. But it went really good. And the one thing I learned, and I'm seeing this more and more, Jessica and Christina also mentioned this, universities are really ready to pitch in. And for me, when I had this workshop at LSU, I got in-kind help in terms of no fees for the conference room and all those things. But after that, I was involved in another meeting at LSU, and actually our university pitched in some money to make it happen. So I think university are recognizing this importance, as Heather mentioned. These are really great tools to get people together, show what facilities these universities have. And so I think if you go and talk with the Office of Research and Development, chances are there might be some support that can be supplemented. I'll stop there and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Kanchan. The field trip was amazing. If you have a chance to go to the River Center in Baton Rouge, I highly recommend it. It is a very impressive digital elevation model, and the way that it's visualized is just beyond words. There's no way I can describe it to you, but it's a fantastic tool for taking science and translating it to action. So it was really cool to be able to do that. But this team worked tirelessly, and it brought in more people from the geology and geomorphology side, which, I mean, I will point out that this workshop proposal actually started with a session at OCB. At our summer workshop. It started as a plenary session, and that's how a lot of these things start, either as a plenary session or maybe just 2 people getting together over lunch and scribbling on a napkin. And that's how it happens. And so I really encourage you to find these connection points. And sometimes they're online And that might be more of a reality now in a, you know, a brief funding reduction, but I think that we find ways to connect, and OCB is going to be here to sustain those connection points as long as we can. So do talk to our project office if you have ideas or thoughts about how to do that creatively, because we are wide open. We are already talking internally amongst ourselves about ideas and formats that enable people to come together and still make science happen. So thank you so much, Kanchan. Last but not least, I'm going to invite Sarah to tell us a little bit about the Pacific Northwest mCDR node.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Heather. So yeah, I can introduce myself first. I'm Sarah Nawaz. I'm the research director at the Institute for Responsible Carbon Removal at American University, and I also have an affiliation with the University of British Columbia. And I was a co-lead for the Pacific Northwest mCDR node. Meg Chadsey at Washington Sea Grant was kind of our main lead, and we were also working with Cohen Bauer, who's at Ocean Networks Canada. And I should say Jessica Cross was also sort of an honorary co-lead with us too. And we really were trying to, with our node, kind of create a community of people that bring together a community of people that are already researching and working on marine carbon dioxide removal technologies in the kind of broader Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon. Essentially, this being a region where there's a lot happening with these technologies, both sort of on the kind of research side and also the more practical on the ground side. And I'd say our kind of goal was to sort of both build kind of out these connections between people and momentum to spur on collaborative research and projects in this space. Really a lot of emphasis on bringing people together and relationship building. We wanted to, you know, bring together folks that were already thinking about the topic, but also try to brainstorm how we could bring in folks that maybe could be thinking about this topic and have a lot of important knowledge and perspectives to bring to the table, but maybe who hadn't already participated in some of these conversations or were already doing research in this area. So we had an emphasis on trying to convene research, everyone from kind of research side, NGOs, companies, sort of industry side, tribal organizations, and sort of, I think we had some regulatory folks, both state and federal, and then broader kind of sector supporting organizations, so convening type folks. And we had an online meeting to sort of understand priorities that people were bringing to the table to make sure that this was really kind of collectively, sort of designed. And then we also had an in-person meeting in Seattle where we had essentially a series of discussion groups on key topics. So I believe they were sort of permitting and regulatory issues. And I should say those topics were kind of, decided by the folks that participated in this online meeting. So regulatory and permitting issues, community and public engagement questions, because that's a really kind of key thing for this topic area. Modeling, and then a conversation about test beds sort of being a place where you can kind of grow and demonstrate a technology in a given location. And out of this work, we kind of have a longer term vision, I guess, to sort of try to turn this into a bit of a kind of an established community of practice where we're developing a set of shared regional research priorities for the region. And we're trying to do that in a way that's even more diverse in kind of who participates in this process. And I guess I can sort of wrap up by saying that we've put in two different applications to get additional funds to sort of build out this work further. So we're really, hopeful that something will come out of that, and excited about, having this kind of community of folks coming together to think collectively and kind of push this topic forward in our region. So yeah, I'll stop there, but happy to answer questions, of course.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm really excited about, this group still continues to gather too. They have a newsletter. Meg sends out a newsletter on email, and also a they gather in person with their they have a stuffed octopus that they bring and just put it on the table so that everybody knows that that's them. Whether it's a coffee place or a brewery or wherever they're gathering, there's this octopus sitting on the table and people know where to go, and they're still coming together and they're still talking to each other. And so I think that that's a really telling about the impact of the gathering. May has been putting links in the chat. Thank you so much, May, for that. These are just extra links to let you learn more information about the mCDR nodes and also all of the other activities that were featured today. I'd love to save the last 10 minutes here for Q&A. If people want to just come on screen, if you're comfortable with that, and if you feel better dropping questions in the chat, I'm happy to get our group to try to answer them. I want to point out also that the Scientific Steering Committee is here with you today. If you're a Scientific Steering Committee member, please raise your hand so people know who you are. So the SSC, I mean, you've probably seen it in our e-news, but the SSC is actually seeking nominations for new members, including a new early career member. You can learn more about that on our website. And the SSC is really, I'm kind of the initial point of contact for people to bounce ideas and talk about crafting a proposal. And then it's the SSC. I mean, we run this largely like an agency proposal panel. And the SSC is the body that makes the decisions on, which proposals are supported. So it's an important job, and I encourage those of you who are interested in OCB and are passionate about the topics that it's interested in to apply. Self-nominations are welcome, or feel free to submit nominations of your colleagues. So the floor is open for your questions. We'd love to hear more from you. And I will keep my eye on.
Heather, this is Patty Matrai, and I'm going to try to get in because I have another doctor's appointment at 4 that I'm driving to. So it is what it is. So I have 2 questions, and I had sent them to May. One, I now have the answer, but others may want to know whether a budget can include institutional indirect costs.
No, it cannot.
Okay, great. The second question is, will the funds stay at OCB or will they be sent to the institution like Bigelow?
The funds stay at OCB and we pay the bills for you. So if people are submitting for travel support or travel reimbursement, then we reimburse them directly, and we can pay bills like catering bills or meeting support costs or other bills associated with the workshop, but we don't transfer funds to another institution.
Thank you, all done. I already had gotten the answer, but then I realized that perhaps others may want to have that too. Thanks.
Thanks, Patty. So we had Colleen and then Sarah.
Thanks everyone for this presentation. So in the very beginning, Heather, one of your suggestions was why OCB, but then some of the examples had collaborations with like CLIVAR or supplemental funding. So can you say like what kind of collaborations are allowed, and then also how much should be in place at the time that this proposal is submitted to you?
How much budget wise?
No, like how much of the other collaboration, like should that be secured at that point or also being proposed to them at the same time? Is that okay?
So collaborations are encouraged when it is, so when I say authentic, I mean, we can't talk about carbon uptake and cycling in the ocean without these different disciplinary perspectives gathering. So if there's a network that represents, for example, SOLAS and OCB have collaborated on a few things to date, and developed a science plan focused on the air-sea interface. And that really brings together expertise from our respective communities that, you know, we couldn't address air seed dynamics and greenhouse gas exchange without the expertise of these two communities. And when it comes to OCB and US CLIVAR, you know, we're bringing together various communities of practice to be able to do the science that you have put on the table. So you can't do that science within one or within the other. You've got to kind of have some sort of an interaction there. So it from the science perspective, the science should lead in terms of those collaborations. Like Zach said, you know, this group started talking about, you know, the pathways. They had a CLIVAR group, a small group, and they realized, you know, the biogeochemistry, the biological pump, like there are a lot of pathways there that we don't have represented in our small group. And so we need to kind of have a broader conversation and invite more disciplines to the table. So that's what those kind of, you know, the science should require the collaboration in order to enrich the outcome, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And if you have specific, you know, ideas or things that you're thinking about, I'm happy to talk in more detail.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm up. Thanks, Heather. So I don't see a lot of emphasis in the proposal guidelines and requirements on developing our team prior to submitting. I think it would be great if we could, but is it putting the cart before the horse to sort of develop your team and submit materials, sort of who's in your steering committee, that kind of thing, because it might get upended somehow through the OCB process? Or how much investment on this end of the submission should we put into developing the team?
You are welcome to have a team of people before you submit the proposal. It is not a requirement. And if you do come to the table with your proposal and you have a full team, the SSC might even weigh in and say, well, it looks like if you want to do this, you might want to invite a BGC Argo float expert to the table, or you might want to invite, you know, somebody involved in, I don't know, anything, you know, mesopelagic remineralization timescales, you know, like any kind of, you know, that the SSC will give you feedback if it doesn't seem like you have the expertise needed to advance the science objectives of your activity. But yeah, you are welcome to do that, or you're welcome to wait until afterwards. Oftentimes it's helpful to have at least part of your committee assembled, because they can help you with the proposal writing, and having those ideas, bouncing ideas back and forth amongst many people is often better than just trying to go it alone.
And also for budgeting, I know you don't require a detailed budget breakdown, but you do require a budget, an overall figure. And I'm not sure how you'd get to that without sort of understanding who your team is and what kinds of support they might need to make this happen.
So we don't require a figure. All I've put in there
Okay.
is an upper limit of what we will be able to spend on your activity.
Okay, so we don't need to specify if we think it's going to be lower. We don't even need to tell you that.
No,
Okay.
you really don't. But what we want from you kind of is the budget line items, and then we can add the price tags later. But I want you to tell us what are the things that you envision needing support for, and then we can kind of go in and work together to, you know, all of the proposals that are selected for funding will work with the PIs to put those numbers in there and make sure that we, you know, we're cutting corners as much as everybody else right now, because it's, you know, it's our science reality right now, but that's not forever, but it is right now. So we are doing this to help you accomplish your objectives on, you know, the smallest dime possible, basically. Any other questions? And if you don't think of it today and you want to talk to me about an idea, please just reach out, because I've already had many conversations, email exchanges, Zoom meetings. I've already entertained, you know, a few of these. So I'm happy to continue to do that. I think it's always good. I mean, many of you who are submitting proposals to federal agencies have done this with your program managers, and I encourage you to do it with our office as well. I've been doing this for a long time, and we've funded so many different types of activities at OCB that I'm really happy to help. All right, well, it's 4:01, so I will let the rest of you,
Heather,
it's 4:01 where I am.
Patricia had something in the chat that's sort of a follow-up. Patricia,
Oh.
try a follow-up to my question.
Oh, where is
I don't
it?
know if Patricia can come online. If not, I can read it out, or you can read it.
Okay, so Patty says, you said no budget in the proposal, but the proposal instructions say to outline the large categories. So an overall figure is okay. If you want to send us an estimate, you're welcome to do so, but it is not required. It's more important to us that you put the line items in there. Like we're thinking we'll need hotel support for this many nights for, you know, or whatever. You don't even have to get as specific as this many people, this many nights, just, you know, travel support, hotel, you know, lodging support for a subset of the participants, blah, 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 early career travel support stipends, whatever it is that you could envision wanting to have OCB support for. And we've put the caps in there just to remind you of what our max spending is for each of these types of activities, just to give you some idea of where we're going. And we will post the recording of today's webinar on the activity solicitation website as well, so that you have both of them to look at. So I want to thank all of the SSC members and activity leaders, OCB activity leaders who joined us and shared their great wisdom today. And again, encourage you all to reach out if you have ideas. I'm happy to talk through them with you. And thank you all so much for coming today. We'll see you very soon.